And we are live. Welcome, mystery and thriller fans. I'm your on air host, Sara DiVello, and I am so excited to welcome to the show, live from London, four-time Oscar nominated filmmaker turned thriller writer, Anthony McCarten, here to give us the inside scoop on his brand new red hot book, Going Zero. Anthony, welcome to Mystery and Thriller Mavens. Tell us about this book.
Well, it's sort of the story of 10 carefully selected applicants who were chosen to participate in a beta test of a revolutionary new spyware called Fusion, which is the brainchild of this techno whiz kid, Cy Baxter. And it's a public-private partnership with the CIA, US government. And it is the next phase of surveillance as a powerful security tool to be used as a crime deterrent internationally and domestically. Now, if this thing works, Fusion stands to win a $90 billion government contract. But first they have to figure out whether it's going to work. And so they've agreed to do a beta test and use these 10 candidates and give them a task of disappearing for 30 days. If they can stay off the grid and be undetected by this almost futuristic surveillance apparatus, then they win $3 million tax-free dollars. If they're caught, they obviously get nothing, and it's also if Fusion don't catch them, then their $90 billion government funding is thrown into jeopardy. So, without spoiling too much of the novel, some of the candidates are easily caught, but someone they just can't get a hold of is a Boston librarian.
Well, I am a fan of libraries. I'm here in Boston and I am a fan of Caitlin Day. So I can't wait to get into, because I feel like I am Caitlin Day. So I can't wait to get into, I'm Caitlin Day in an alternate universe. So I can't wait to get into every delicious detail. First, I just want to welcome everyone who's joining us. If you've been here before, you know the drill. And if you're new, welcome. We're so happy to have you. Here's the drill. This is your chance to ask this incredible four-time Oscar-nominated filmmaker and thriller writer anything you want. So ask him about his writing process, his practice, how the secret to cranking up tension, how did he come up with this crazy idea? Anything that you have weighing on your brain, just go ahead and get right into it. I'll get them into the chat. John is joining us live from Northeast Ohio. John, welcome to the conversation. Thank you for joining us. So Anthony, I have a few questions. So first of all, your book addresses so many important issues like privacy, like how available we all are online. Caitlin, of course, being the rare soul who's not on Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, all the things. I'm out there and suddenly feeling very exposed. The government spying on us, so many important and interesting issues. But then there's also the heart of the story, which is, I think so many of us who love books, dreamed of being a librarian or dreamed of owning a bookstore, right? Like that's the dream, is having a cute little bookstore with a cafe or being a librarian. And here Caitlin is, this seemingly, very ordinary librarian, but she's the one who starts evading Cy and the team, much to Cy's surprise. So how did you come up with this crazy cool idea? Walk us through the moment of inception.
Well, Caitlin is kind of the definition of analog. She represents a world which is not, which is sort of standing up a bulwark against the digital, invasion. And I think the inception of the idea was probably in 2016. And I was sitting with a bunch of friends at a dinner table. We were probably into our second bottle of wine. And we were talking about how we were starting to feel like our devices were working against us. We started sharing anecdotes like you talk to someone about, maybe I take a holiday to Tenerife or something, and suddenly you get a targeted ad on your phone saying discount trip to Tenerife, and you go, wow,
yes,
what? And we all had similar experiences, and so if you start to then accept the idea that privacy now has pretty much been surrendered, and that we're all being tracked all the time and our data is being sold, then how can you escape it? If you had to escape it, and go off grid, how would you do it? And so the conversation sort of waxed into everyone going around the table and saying, what would you do if you had to escape all surveillance? Where would you go for a period of time? And I think that was the start of the novel. It was speaking to this period in our history, which I don't think anyone can any longer deny, that we're now seeing the widespread and often invisible erosion of our personal freedoms through this ubiquitous surveillance. But even more sort of subtly and perhaps insidiously, we're seeing even the replacement of independent thought and judgment by being inculcated with these automated systems of control and behavior manipulation. We're being told what to think. We're being coerced. And are our thoughts even our own? So these are the themes that sort of emerge.
Yeah. Yes, so many important issues there. And it's interesting because my husband and I will often have that same conversation that you shared you had at the dinner table in 2016, where same thing. He just said to me, "Oh, I need some new socks." And then the next time he logs onto his phone, it says, "Oh, 25% off these socks." And it's startling, or we said, "Oh, what was the name of Bill Murray's first movie?" And then you log on and there's, the Bill Murray, learn more about Bill Murray. I mean, it is creepy. It's really quite crazy. Margaret joining us from the West Coast saying, right, the panopticon, I hope I'm saying that right, is no longer necessary because it's in our heads. We're watching each other.
Yeah.
Fascinating stuff. John saying we give away almost all of our privacy, which is even more shocking, right, John? Lynn joining us live from Philadelphia. Hi, Lynn. Welcome to the conversation. Thanks so much for joining us. And here, staying very on brand, we have a mystery user not revealing his or their identity, saying hello, Sara and Anthony here from South Carolina. And I have a feeling that's my friend Anissa Joy, who is actually a librarian. Anissa, is this you? No pressure to reveal your identity, but very cool to have a librarian in the audience as we are singing the praises of librarians. So Anthony, I like how you balance those issues, because this book certainly did make me think, how would I go off the grid? And me being so active on social media would have certainly a harder time than Caitlin. I would delete all my accounts. I mean, she really thinks ahead, and the specificity with which you detail her escape plan and how she, goes to the ATM, shows her face, but then has a plan and goes into the subway system, which we call the T here in Boston. Now, you clearly have spent some time in Boston to have this kind of specificity, or are you just looking at Google Maps and using that intel that is being given so freely? Give us a scoop.
No, I actually made 2 movies in Boston in the last 4 years. So I've been spending a lot of time there, and fell in love with the place, to be honest. It felt very homey. I recognized I'm sort of an Irish Catholic background, and certainly there's a deep sort of tradition there.
Yeah.
So when I was choosing a location for it, it just seemed a natural fit.
And one of the things that I thought, because it really made me think, God, how would I get off the grid? Because I actually didn't realize until I read your book how many street cams there are and how many face cams there are in Boston. And now I'm going to start noticing, because Caitlin is evading them very carefully. And you have her go down into the subway system, then take a tunnel, which I do know about because I used to go to that tube stop. But what made you think about going into the grid? I mean, when you were at that dinner party, were you thinking this is how you, Anthony, would do it? Or was this, how did you consult a security person? What is the best way to get off the grid? Or how did you decide to do that? Like, how would one evade it? Tell us about your research.
Well, a lot of it was I would start with what I would do. And so I came up with like 10 different ideas for what I would do. And they're kind of all in there. And some of them are stupid because most of us, don't know how sophisticated this technology is. But some of them are very sophisticated. So apart from the stuff I could dream up, I did a lot of research on where technology is and also anticipating where it might go. Because my original aim was to set this story like 5 years in the future. and sort of show a world that we're moving into. But as I was writing it, it was suddenly 4 years in the future, and then 3 years in the future. And, maybe the novel, by the time you read it, we're only 5 minutes in the future. That's how fast it's evolving.
Interesting. Because because I liked how you gave, Caitlin and, how Caitlin the forethought with which she plans it and what mode of transport and where she goes and both what happens, what she does intentionally, and then some things that befall her, that end up working out for her. It's such a cool story. Okay,
Yeah,
the question. Oh,
just
go ahead.
one thing on her is that, I've often been asked about her and where does the character come from. She really was
Yeah.
born of the need in a story of having a central character who everybody would underestimate. And not only would other people underestimate her, she would underestimate herself, that she would not know the extent of her creativity and her bravery, if you like, and her ingenuity. And often in our lives, we're not tested. And so we don't know how brave or ingenious we are. And so I wanted this novel also to be a story of self-discovery.
Oh, I love that. That's so interesting, Anthony. I like how you said that you chose to create in Caitlin Day a character that everyone would underestimate, because we see Cy and his team underestimating her. But for me, who loves libraries and librarians so much, I thought you created her with intention, because librarians are a treasure trove of information. I mean, nobody knows more than librarians. I have go to the library over and over and over again as I research my own books, or I mean, even just how to figure out the tax code or whatever. I mean,
Right.
they're just treasure trove. So for me, I was like, oh, this is freaking brilliant. Of course, a librarian. But you're right, because she's a quiet person who's in her
Who's
family.
obviously book smart, but
Yes.
she needed to be street smart, so she has to get smart quick and to outwit the greatest surveillance apparatus ever invented.
Well, let's take some questions from the audience, from our favorite, or my favorite librarian, Anissa Joy, who's revealing her identity. Anthony, she wants to know, which character was the hardest to write and why? Anissa, thank you.
I think maybe on balance, I mean, it's a toss up in my mind between Caitlin and Cy Baxter, who's the kind of, I don't want to use the word Mark Zuckerberg, but I've already just done it. But he's a kind of big social network, big tech kind of guy. And writing him and not demonizing him was tricky, and took various drafts to humanize him, because he really does believe that when it comes down to it, we should be prepared to give up privacy if it's going to really result in added security and safety. Because look, the predicate is that if you've got nothing to hide, what are you worried about? What do you care if you give up a little privacy? The people who do care about privacy laws are wrongdoers, because they want to hide their actions, their intentions, and their locations. So I did a lot of work in humanizing him and making him three-dimensional. And he's a character I'm quite proud of, because I wanted his side of the argument to be just as valid as Caitlin's anti-surveillance sort of philosophy.
Oh, that's so interesting that you felt like he wasn't human, as human as you wanted him to be in your first drafts. Because I think the argument, that he makes is, there's merit to it, right? As
That's
we
right.
live in um, a violent world, and I think to myself, I will be honest, I think to myself, I'd be willing to give up a little privacy if I could be guaranteed safety, sure. But then of course we see the underbelly of that. Just as an aside, I also liked how there was a reference to Cy, scheduling his yoga class. And that was so humanizing for me. I was like, oh, here's this dude who also wants to zen out. And I chuckled at that. I'm also a yoga teacher. So that felt
Yeah.
very humanizing for me, Anthony.
Yeah, there was a little touch of Steve Jobs in there, who was kind of zen kind of guy. But yeah, no, I think it's incumbent upon any writer, when they're talking about any hot button issue,
Mm.
is to empower both sides of the argument equally so that it's a fair fight.
Yes, and that's hard when you have to put yourself in the camp, in the brain, the body, the belief system of someone that you fundamentally disagree with, but I think that is such a powerful way to do that. Um, Now that we're talking about your process of humanizing him, let's delve a little deeper into your creative process there, Anthony. And Nisa wondering, tell us more about that. Are you a plotter or you're a pantser?
A plotter or a what?
A pantser. So a plotter is someone, like a Jeff Devers who spends 6 to 8 months vigorously
Mhm.
outlining every scene. And Jeff Devers has shared his outlines go up to 180 pages, every scene, every chapter, every character, backstory, everything, versus a pantser who flies by the seat of his pants and
Okay, I'm
lets
with you.
the
I'm with
character
you.
develop. Tell us about
Thank
your
you.
process.
You've gifted me a new phrase. I'll remember that. A
See,
pantser.
that's a librarian for you. That's a librarian for you. Anissa's teaching us.
Thank you very much, Anissa. I think I began as a pantser and became a
Okay.
plotter, but I'm not. I wouldn't spend months doing it. Here's my thing that I learned that works for me, and every writer has their own process. But what works for me is I have to know my ending. Simple as that. I have to know my ending because the ending contains the DNA for the rest of the story, and you basically can work backwards from your ending. Misdirects, it's a misdirect. It's not a cul-de-sac. Your destination, and so you can plot your journey in a very meticulous way and be really a wonderful sort of curator of the reader, so that you're every step of the way you're kind of in control, and you're doing manipulations that are not frustrating to the reader but will eventually pay off because you have the payoff, you know what it is. So when I have a good idea, that's not enough for me. So most people when they think maybe I've got a novel in me, they often only have a premise. They don't know how they will then turn that into a fully fledged story. And for me, I think the key, and certainly the thing I've done a few sort of master classes with people, as I say, if you are someone who struggles with elaborating on a premise, know your ending. Ask yourself that question, and perhaps don't even begin until you know it.
Ooh. Ooh, so I just wanna make sure I understand. You knew the ending, this ending, from before you started writing, and it didn't change?
I have to know my ending. Otherwise, I don't know where I'm heading with it, and I have no sort of sense of security or confidence that I'm going to be taking somewhere, the reader somewhere rewarding. If I know that the destination is going to be worth the journey, then it imbues your writing with a certain level of confidence that you otherwise wouldn't have.
Ooh. I love that. Now tell me what you mean by DNA. That is shaping your story, it is making your story what it is. Am I understanding that correctly? Tell us a little more about that.
The ending will contain a sequence of events which will predicate the characters that you need to get you there in the most surprising way. So if someone triumphs at the end and you want that to be an unexpected triumph, then you create a character who you would not think could have triumphed under those circumstances. So this is where the ending gives you the clues for everything that precedes it. And I mean, we could talk about the location of where you end up. Well, why did you end up there? That means we should start here. You know what I mean? If you know the ending, then we know what the precondition should be. So it's about knowing, as I'm kind of repeating myself here, but know your ending.
I love that. That is a really interesting and new way for me to think about writing and to think about the ending and to think about how the ending not only impacts but shapes and enriches and infuses your entire story with everything that it is. This is really cool. Thank you, Anthony. You guys, this book is not even out yet. Anthony is joining us live from London to give us the inside scoop and take your questions about Going Zero the day before it comes out. The book comes out tomorrow, so you can pre-order your copy tonight. And the good folks at Murder by the Book will send you Going Zero tomorrow when the book drops here in the US. So here is that link. So click and pre-order Going Zero, so you can immerse yourself in the world of Cy versus Caitlin and the race for privacy and escape. Here is that link, no matter where you're watching from. Now, Anthony, your book has racked up some incredible praise, and I want to get into some of that. So, first of all, from #1 New York Times bestselling author Douglas Preston, who wrote The Cabinet of Dr. Leng and The Lost City, Douglas raves that this is one of the best thrillers he has read in a long time, although the word thriller doesn't quite capture the sheer pleasure of reading the story with its wickedly clever setup, its unassuming librarian protagonist, its twisty plot, and surprise ending. Little did he know that ending was no surprise. He said, "This is beyond pure entertainment. The truth of this novel speaks about the disturbing times we live in. I highly, highly recommend this book." Congratulations on that amazing praise from Douglas Preston. And he is not the only one who is raving about it. AJ Finn, the number one New York Times bestselling author of The Woman in the Window, also chiming in with some incredible words of praise. I'm going to pop that up so we can all read it together. He raves, "Going Zero is the first novel I've read in years that speeds the pulse as much as it challenges the brain. That can you beat the system hook recalls the juggernaut likes of Ready Player One and Lost, but Going Zero outpaces them both and dives deeper. It is a speculative fiction classic in the vein and even in the league of I, Robot and Jurassic Park. A thriller you can gobble down with a bucket of popcorn and also feel smarter having read. Provocative, perceptive." I could go on and on. Anthony, congratulations on that. What do you think, as someone who is a filmmaker and thriller writer, what do you think the secret is to that hook that AJ Finn is talking about? The juggernaut of Ready Player One and Lost. What tell us your secrets.
I don't know if it's a secret, but I think that what attracted me to it was that you have this ticking clock driving narrative, which is extremely propulsive. You have David and Goliath. You have the little person against the big machine. I mean, these date back to the ancient Greeks. So these are tried and tested little formula. But what perhaps is a little something extra in the book that you may not always get is that it dives into something which is just now coming up on everyone's radar with AI and the way that we're surrendering a lot of our personal freedoms, and the passivity that we've shown towards technology for 25 years, which has no parallel in drugs or food. We require regulation. We want to moderate the ill effects of these things. But with technology, we're so in awe of the miracles they can perform that we've said, you know what, don't be a killjoy, just let them roll, get it out there. And we've surrendered privacy and even being insulated against false information, and no one's complaining about it until now. Until this sort of AI thing came up, people are starting to really worry because it's going to severely change and revolutionize life as we know it.
Now, Anthony, let me ask you this. When I was, posting on all of the platforms which I'm on, Instagram, Facebook, TikTok, Twitter, and talking about interviewing you today and posting pictures of your book in my Easter basket, which I am very sad that you have missed, because I quickly noticed you are not on social media. You are not on, I went to tag you. You weren't on Instagram. You weren't on Twitter. I couldn't find you. And then of course it made sense because I was like, of course he's not, he's, thinking about privacy. But so two questions. Do you see do you see, or do you consider, or how do you feel about the potential positive upsides of for instance, social media, like the sharing of this interview, which we're streaming to Facebook and YouTube. We're having this conversation with people all over the country and actually all over the world through the fact that we're all on this platform. I've connected with so many amazing people. We're talking to so many amazing people right now. Do you see an upside, or you'd be willing to get rid of that just for the preservation of privacy? What are your thoughts?
Well, there are moments when I think, God, can we just put all this back in the box? Can we go back to that? But that denies the enormous social benefits that come with technology or any progress, because all progress creates and destroys, not always in equal measure, in different balances. It gives and it takes. Technology has never been anything else but that. And what we are obliged to do is, in the protection of our rights and of our societies, is to ameliorate or reduce the negatives involved in any progress, because we should distinguish between progress and perfectibility. Sometimes progress rolls out there and it contains more negatives than positives. And unless we step in and regulate it, like we do in every other area of life, then we're buying trouble. And that's all I'm saying. I'm certainly not a revisionist that wants to go back, to an agrarian existence. I'm not Amish. I love my digital toys like anyone else. But look, can we take the sting out of them? Can we take the negatives, the poison out?
Yes.
We take the fact that, that we're living with radicalization, brutishness, misinformation, extreme porn, obsessions with body image, bullying, any number of tech-related perils. Can we just do something about those? Because then we'll be winning. It'll be win-win.
Yes, and there are so many hearts and likes coming up, and people. So this is clearly resonating, and you're so right. I mean, everything from bullying to body image to radicalization. Some really dangerous, scary stuff is happening out there. All really, really valid points. Anthony, so I allow people to submit questions in advance because not everyone's able to watch with us live.
Right.
A lot of people will catch the replay. So I want to get to a few of those as well. So Anna wanted to know, can you speak about the difference between your writing and process for films as well as thrillers? Was it different? Do you prefer one? Are you going to write more thrillers?
I'm going to write another thriller, yeah. I have no choice. My editors at HarperCollins have delivered a fait accompli. So I'm obliged to come up with another one, and I have another one percolating. Too early to talk about it. But they're very different challenges, writing for a film and writing for a novel, but they offer similar levels of pleasure and satisfaction. The beauty of a film is almost like it's an antidote to writing a novel. A solitary endeavor, writing a novel, and it's timely. It's time consuming. It's often multiple years. So when you emerge from one of those, I'm in a wonderful position where I also work in film, and I can jump in, and it's just like joining a big creative team, and and that speaks to my sort of more social side, and so I enjoy that as well. But after I've done a movie or two, it's like, can I go back to my study now? So I'm at heart a writer, but writing in different forms they're great antidotes for each other.
I love that, because when I was reading Going Zero, I think because I'm a very visual reader with a very active imagination, I could see it. I mean, I could see Caitlin with her backpack, going in the tunnel to Downtown Crossing. I could see her, and I don't want to give any spoilers, but as she embarks on her, 30-day challenge of evading Psy, it was so visual to me. And so I was wondering, is this because of your background as a filmmaker? Is this because you are envisioning that this will be adapted, to a screenplay, or are you just also a very visual writer?
Well, I hope I'm a visual writer. I think it's always a good quality to have as a novelist. You want to create pictures in people's heads. You want to create environments, make them alive, get people's pulses racing. But I've also learned that through cinema writing, it's been very beneficial to my novel writing, because With cinema, you have to be extremely disciplined, and not a wasted word, not a wasted scene. You enter a scene late and you get out early. So you cut to the essence of it. And something of having done that for many years now, when I turn to writing a novel, I cut out the shoe leather. Why have him walk up the steps, open the door, walk in? What is that doing for the reader? And so often I think there's a sort of cross-pollination happening in my work now, where I go, boom, let's start the scene in the middle of it. So it's very different from, Victor Hugo or Dickens, where you stop outside the house, you open the door, you go up the stairs,
Right.
And I think with short attention spans, we're all more cinematic. So the novel has certainly been affected. The modern novel, I think, has been very affected by film.
Lynn would like to know, Anthony, as we read your book, should we think that this spyware is already in existence or something yet to be developed? Great question, Lynn.
Yeah, I would have, like I said, I set out to write a story that would be set 5 years in the future. It's 5 minutes in the future if it's not here already. Many of the spyware apparatus and tools that you will read about in this thing are real, and many of them are already being used, either by governments or by corporations, big tech.
Wow, I had no idea.
And you know what? You gave your permission for them to have access to all this and to use all this. As you were so desperate to open up an article on Miley Cyrus and who she's dating, you clicked away your rights, and you really have no leg to stand on.
Right. Yeah, exactly. And it's like, I can't give that up, Anthony. I need to know whether Prince Harry and Meghan Markle are going to make it to the coronation or not. Like, these are things I need to know.
And you gave up a lot to find that out.
Exactly. And it was worth it because again, this is not something I just want to know. I must know.
Yeah. That's it.
Anthony, your work earned a starred review from Booklist. Let's pop that up. They raved, this is a story that is timely, frightening, exciting, suspenseful, and surprising. They talk about your well-crafted characters, your secrets, and neck-wrenching plots. I like that because I was kind of wrenching my neck keeping up with you. As well as they deemed this, quote, an outstanding thriller. Publishers Weekly talking about your edgy, compulsive, readable book. Kirkus also chiming in, saying this is a well-written yarn, proves you don't have to have a bloodbath to have an engaging thriller. And that's something I actually want to talk about, because I personally, I want everyone to have something that they enjoy on my screen. So I interview horror. I do talk to the gory writers, but for me personally, I don't like gore. That's not for me. I'm actually a very sensitive soul, and that stuff stays with me for a while. So I really appreciated that there wasn't a bloodbath or gore in this. So I really appreciated that Kirkus noted that as well. What are your thoughts about violence on the page or on the screen?
I'm not averse to it, but it just simply wasn't required for the story. And you know what? I'm not someone who's spent my life reading thrillers. I'm sort of more attracted to literary fiction, if we can call it that. So I want, it was really the fact that the story obliged a thriller structure that saw me writing a thriller. So it's kind of maybe a little crossover between sort of literary fiction and a thriller.
Yeah, it's interesting because I think a lot of people don't think that mysteries or thrillers are literary. But when I had Wrong. Exactly. When I had Dr. Thea Sutton, who has a PhD in English literature on, she said, I said, what do you think of when people say that? Because there's a common misconception. And she said, I say to people like that, you just haven't found the right thriller, honey. And it's so true, because there are, thrillers span the gamut from noir, quick and dirty, upscale market, literary. I mean, there's literally something for everyone. And I'm really glad to have that conversation with you. Lynn saying, I am frighteningly hooked to read this book. Yes. yes, Lynn, you're in the right place. And the book is out tomorrow. So y'all, we are out of time. We're actually over time, but time flies when you're having fun. So here is that link one more time. You're going to want to pre-order this from our favorite woman-owned independent bookstore, Murder by the Book. And here once again is that link. So no matter where you are watching from Facebook or YouTube, we're live on 6 different destinations right now. Here is that link. Click and order. Immerse yourself in this crazy cool world that Anthony has created for us, and then hop over to Mystery and Thriller Mavens and tell us what you think. That's where all the good tea is spilled. Tell us what you think of Caitlin. Tell us what you think about Sai. Are you team Caitlin, team Sai? Are you pro privacy, pro security? What are your thoughts and why? Let's continue the conversation over there. As for now, we are out of time. Anthony McCarten, thank you so much for joining us today, giving us the inside scoop. What a pleasure to host you in such a thoughtful, thought-provoking conversation. Please come back when that next book, which is currently gestating in your brain, is out.
Keep fighting the good fight for the written word.
Yay. All right, y'all. I hope you have a great Mystery Monday. I'll be back at 7 p.m. Eastern with New York Times bestselling author Elisa Lynn Valdez. I will see you then.